What's up, guys? When you get a chance, let me know if you guys can hear me. I'm gonna go ahead and add in the mic just because we got a little bit of background noise. Let me know if you can hear me. Whoever that is that's jumped on. All right, I'm gonna get the questions pulled up. Awesome, thank you so much, Sherry. I appreciate that. So I'm gonna go over a couple things. I want to talk a little bit about the some of the questions that have come in since doing the last video on franchising, and then we'll get into how you buy these and that kind of thing. All right. So one of the questions that came in was in regards to a list of specific franchises. I had several people that sent in kind of specific franchises, wondering if I felt like they were a good franchise or a bad franchise, that kind of thing. The thing that I am a big proponent of is it depends who you are. You know, I talked about the Steak and Shake opportunity a little while back. That personally isn't anything that, you know, in my specific situation that makes sense for me. And so with every deal, you've got to look at, you know, does this make sense for where I am personally? If you look at that opportunity or like a Chick-fil-A opportunity with both of those, I think there's some money to be made, especially with Chick-fil-A. I mean, as a proprietor, owner, slash, you know, manager, you can generate some serious income, but they want you fully dedicated to that business. Then, you know, when you look at other franchises, I think that depending on who you are, there could be big opportunities, but, you know, it takes getting to know who you are. So it's not this cut and dry thing of, do I think this is a good or bad deal? It's more of, is this a good deal for you? So for the average person, you know, they're going to look at things a lot differently than a lot of the private equity funds. So one of the franchises that came up, because I've owned some of them, was the Subway franchises. And, you know, when it comes to Subway franchise, I think for a lot of investors like private equity funds, very large family offices, those kinds of things, it can make a really great return, a really great ROI, because they're dealing with putting money to work and getting, you know, 7-8% in some of their other investments. When in a lot of cases, they're kind of using the McDonald's strategy of, let us buy a building, let's put a franchise in the building, and we don't really care about the ROI on the franchise itself. We want that to pay rent and buy us this building. And so when you're looking at those kind of things, that's a very different strategy from the average person who's like, hey, I got bills to pay. I need a certain amount of cash flow on a monthly basis that's going to pay my bills. When you're looking at a lot of the kind of mid-level franchises, which may have a lot of track record, they may have maybe 500 to 1,000 franchisees, and that's not a hard number. It just so happens that two of my most valuable deals were kind of in that range. will a lot of times have the best cash flow on a kind of individual store basis. And you want to make sure that when you're looking at a deal and you want to be able to pay your bills, that's the most important thing. It's not any new strategies. It's not getting excited about products or things within the business. It's what's going to be my average monthly income. Obviously, there's seasons and all of that. So back when I was doing a lot of these deals, that was my most important thing. I was kind of combing it, and I think people get distracted by a lot of other factors. Like, oh, how fast is it growing, and how many other people are buying it. And they get anxious about closing because the franchisors are like, hey, we've got a line of people. If you don't buy it, somebody else is. You need to hurry up and make a decision. All those things that kind of can create this frenzy to buy the franchise aren't necessarily things that are going to mean it's going to be successful in the future. So for me personally, I love the not super tiny. I don't like getting into a franchise that's under 50 units. They're not very proven. I think when I bought the first home restaurant franchise, it may have been under 100, but I feel like over 50, you need over 50 to just prove that this thing is a system and it's working, and that they have something that's worth you buying. Now, the interesting thing about the under 50 franchises is, or even sometimes under 100, is that they are sometimes more motivated. It's scary. Subway, for instance, Subway, or even the Second Street and Subway, it's got two that I've mentioned in the past, but there are plenty of these that are all over, have a lot of stores that close. And so Subway could have 500 stores that close and still have a 98% success rate just because they have so many stores. But you don't care about that. If you're in one of those 500, that doesn't matter. Now, the upside to dealing with the smaller franchises, they're going to do everything in their power to make you successful, because how much you make, they're putting in the average numbers when they're trying to sell the future franchises. All of that has a huge impact. If there are only 50 franchises and 5 of them, something happens, that's probably the end of that franchise. They aren't going to be able to get from 50 to 100. So I like when somebody's super motivated. So it's about finding that balance. I really have focused on franchises that had under 1,000, but and I've only done things that were over 50. But there are differing benefits to doing franchises that are in those ranges. And again, for the person that is sitting on family money or running a fund or all of that, they're going to come at this from a totally different perspective than the person that is just trying to get their first business up running. The other thing to consider is that, depending on how much cash you have, being able to work with that franchisor that's very motivated to get as many franchisees and get them successful, they may be willing to make concessions. There are no circumstances where McDonald's is making big concessions on their franchise. They don't need to. But the smaller franchises, they may be willing to make special deals with you. Say, hey, we'll help finance this portion of your franchise. We'll not charge you franchise fees for the first 6 months. Those things can mean the difference between you being able to pull together the financing that you need to get the franchise and not being able to. One of the questions that came in, and I'll go into more detail on some strategies around this, but was around financing. How do you get financing? Or how can you create a no money down situation with the franchise that may not exist with selling an existing business? And I mentioned this on a video, but banks love franchise because they know that there's a system. Banks may not understand the business that you're buying, this just an existing business, even if it's making money. Obviously, they love that it's making money, but from that bank's perspective, they're thinking, all right, what's going to happen when you hit your first hiccup, or you end up in a situation where you've got a problem and you don't know the answer to be able to figure it out? In those cases, you've got to come up with the answer. The thing that a bank likes is that you've got a franchisor that is talking to all the franchisees that are all over the country, or sometimes all over the world, bringing back information and able to distribute that out to you to make sure that you've got the answers that you need to any questions or headaches or problems that you're facing in your business. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's one of the reasons that banks love these, and why it's easier to get financing on these than a lot of times. You can get financing more easily on a lot of franchises that aren't making a single dime. They're brand new. You've got to start them up from scratch. It's easier financing for those in a lot of cases than a business that today is making money, because they know that there are a lot of risks still. Even, we know the failure rates for small businesses. Even after they start making money, things change in the market, things change in the industry. The entrepreneur doesn't keep up. A competitor comes to town. All these things that entrepreneur may not have the answer to come up, and then that business ends up in trouble. So wanted to make a quick video on that. Gonna do just based on some of the questions that I've gotten on Instagram here, even within the private Facebook group. Be sure, if you're not a part of that, hit me on Facebook, Ace Chapman, and I'll get you connected and into our private Facebook page. But based on the questions, I can tell there's a lot of interest when it comes to franchises. And yeah, the fact that I've done a lot of those, over 11 units. Actually, how many units total? So yeah, 12 units to be exact. I'm trying to make sure I didn't say the wrong number. So 12 units to be exact of different franchises, and haven't talked a lot about that. I didn't think there was that much interest, but I will dig a lot more into this. So if you've got any questions on franchises, I'm going to be making a few videos in the coming days and weeks digging into this. Maybe a quick question I'll answer before we bounce. Audrey asks, how do you mitigate those risks, specifically competition? So that's kind of the big thing here, is that if you own a business, and let's say you've bought an existing business that hasn't had a competitor. I look at actually a great business that's an example is a business that I bought and sold in Tennessee. That was the Bloom Factory. So this was a business that had been around for 37 years, and there was very little competition. And as big box competitors came in, like Party City and all of that, and actually I had sold the business to somebody, and then he sold the business. So it was like a second owner, or really the fourth owner. Actually, it was a fifth owner of business. The person I bought the business from, they bought it. So this was the fifth owner of this business. It's been around for literally, as old as I am. At this point, probably like 38, 39 years. Been around, that's forever. But as those competitors started to come into the space, it was just, I don't even know how I would enter to those, to that competition if I still own the business. You've got to test a lot of things. And so I guess the point is, with a franchise, what they are more likely to have is, instead of you having to come up with a lot of ideas to figure out how do I fight the competition, the franchise has hopefully already dealt with that. So they've had, instead of you just having that one business and having to figure it out, they've had, 50 opportunities where maybe 5 or 10 of those were up against similar competitors. And they're able to say, hey, here are the top 3 strategies that we use that have worked, not just strategies for you to try. We've got 3 units where we've tried the strategy, and we've got to compare this just like that. This had their strategy, and we've been able to beat them. And that's kind of the benefit that you're getting. I'll answer one more of these, and then I got a 5:30 call in 5 minutes. So Louis asks, do you invest geographically near where you are located? If not, how do you go How do you decide who to work with on the business? So I've done both. Like, I think early on, until you've got great people in place, you want to focus on doing things that are locally and kind of just close around you. Obviously, once I kind of, my career was a little bit weird because my very first deal was an internet business, and I was working with people kind of from the very beginning all over the world. Um, After that, I did some offline businesses that were in my local area, but then I did some franchising. What you're able to do with a franchise, once you've got a really great team, it's easy to move that team around. And so I was able to put units, 3 hours away, 6 hours away. Still, I wanted them within somewhat reasonable driving distance, a day drive away. But as you build out your systems, the bigger you build them, like I said, the person that we sold the subway to, he's got 200 subways. They're just spread out all over. But he started with just a couple, and then bought a couple of more, and then started a few more, and built literally. It's kind of interesting. What you can end up with is a franchise. You end up with almost your own little franchisor because you've got a corporate team of people that are managing those. It's just a much different game. So for me personally, once I'm competing with those kinds of people that own the franchises, I know I'm not going to be able to get the attention of the corporate team of the franchise. They're managing other people that are managing hundreds of units of franchises. And when I bought the homeless franchise, I was able to sit down with the CEO, and talk to him and get an idea of his vision and get the history and that kind of thing. When I bought the franchise from Winmark, which was still a publicly traded company. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that these are even small, but small compared to McDonald's, small compared to Burger King, Subway, those kinds of things. When Winmark was a publicly traded company, I still, as a new franchisee, and obviously I had a vision for being multi-units and that kind of thing. The CEO took time out of his day to sit down with me, spend time with me, and say, hey, you've got access if you want. But what ends up happening as you expand beyond your local area is that you end up having a little mini franchise or like corporation that is in the business of managing these units. And regardless of what you're doing, that's what I'm a big proponent of. If you're buying websites, you got to have a large portfolio. Your goal should be building a team that is managing all of those websites. If you've got a bunch of offline businesses, your goal should be managing a team that is in constant motion of buying more of those businesses, because that's the only way you protect yourself. It's just the Warren Buffett strategy. That's the only, most of the very first business that Warren Buffett bought, Berkshire Hathaway, is out of business. That thing is completely out of business. But the thing that he did was he used the cash flow to buy other businesses. And so it doesn't matter because you're not in the business of running a single franchise, a single website, a single small business. You should be in the business of buying those and creating more and more of them. Awesome. Audrey says, thanks so much. Louis, add this question. It is literally 5:30. I've got to bounce off. Add this once I make I'm going to end the stream and then it'll be live. And so just copy and paste this question in. I'll give you a moment so you can copy that and just paste that in. And then I will get to that question next time. Thanks so much, guys.